Oh my god, it's video games. We're back again. It's me, Retro Drew. We're talking about video games, and as you can see over here, my shelves are looking a little barren today because we're going to be going through my entire Sega Saturn collection. Figured that'd be pretty fun because a couple years ago, I did a brief look. Actually, no, I did a full look of my Super Famicom collection, which has since probably doubled, tripled in size, so that video could probably use an update, but we'll save that for another time because that is much larger than my Saturn collection, which is about, I think it's like just shy of 60 games, which is a small little collection I'm happy with. It's not the most games in the world, but I have been collecting for it for, gosh, about 11 years, just over 10 years at this point, maybe just under. And it's actually funny, yeah, because for my 18th birthday, on their 18th birthday, most people are probably asking for like a car or, I don't know, something expensive like that. And instead, for me, I was like, oh yeah, I'd like a Saturn. Give me a Saturn. I would like a Saturn, please. And this was, years after the Saturn had long since died off. But yeah, just, 60 or so games, which is a nice little collection, especially since, let's be real here. The Saturn is not a cheap console to collect for. Even when I got back, or even when I got into it, I don't know, about 10 years ago or so, things were still pretty expensive. All of the, the really great Japanese Saturn games that you'd want to have in your collection were well into the $100 range. There were still a handful of pretty good, really good common games and slightly less common games that were a little more affordable back then. We'll go through and we'll look at some of them, but to this day, everything has just continued to go up in price, and I don't really collect much for the Saturn anymore because of that. I've kind of been priced out of collecting for it. I will get like the occasional game here and there, or just get a reproduction game, because that is kind of the most affordable way to own a lot of really good Saturn games at this point. And I'll be real with you, a good portion of my collection are reproductions, and I'll let you know which ones are and which ones aren't, etc. But yeah, that's kind of the unfortunate reality with collecting for the Saturn. I might pick up a game here and there, but not like I used to. But anyways, let's get into this Saturn collection, because I have, gosh, I don't know, about 5 stacks sitting next to me of nothing but Saturn games, and I could not be more excited to talk about them, because I do love the Saturn. It's just a great console. I really do love it. Besides the Super Famicom, it is probably my favorite console. And with that, let's just get into it. We're going to go ahead, and I kind of have like a miscellaneous stack over here. Some loose games and stuff like that. But the game I got with my Saturn, it came packaged with it, is actually 3 games. It is a 3-game pack-in of Virtua Fighter 2, Virtua Cop, and Daytona USA. 3 fantastic games for the Saturn. Virtua Fighter is really, really fun. Virtua Cop, since I don't have a light gun to play it on, I only ever used the controller. Still a good game, but not quite as amazing as it would be on a light gun. I really ought to go back and try it with keyboard and mouse, because that is kind of like the best way to play light gun games at this point. And then Daytona USA, fun racing game, good to spend, I don't know, good 15-20 minutes with. But yeah, this is kind of like a neat, not for resale cardboard box, and it's got little cardboard sleeves in there for all 3 of the games and the manuals. That came with it. Next up, got this one, I think for like $15 at a local shop. It's Sonic Jam. The, what is it? It's Sonic 1 through 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and Spinball, plus it has that extra little 3D section world you can go into. That was kind of like their, hey, apology for the fact that we couldn't get Sonic Extreme out. This is what you're going to have to play to hold you over until, the Dreamcast comes out. But yeah, Sonic Jam, pretty cool. Good little collection. Maybe I think this was, the first, the very first collection of those Sonic games that have been endlessly re-released to this day. Oh, next up is a game I just covered last year around Christmas, and that is Enemy Zero. And I actually got this from the same local shop, and I only have these discs in these little sleeves, and I really need to just buy like a Japanese copy because they're really cheap, and just put the Japanese discs in here and put these in the actual case. That's what I should really do, because I would like to not have these in just a little slipcase like this. But Enemy Zero, an excellent, excellent survival horror game on the Saturn. One of the best. One of the best. Go check out my video if you want to hear more about it. Okay. Next up is one of 2 games that I actually have the real Saturn jewel cases for. And this is Bug 2. I got this at the same local store called Sage Mantis. I can't even remember what I got this for, but it wasn't like too expensive. But it is the sequel to the first Bug, which I think was a launch game for the Saturn. A neat little 2.5D platformer that kind of utilizes some of the engine, I think, from Sonic Extreme. But I gotta say, Bug 2, not a very good game. I kind of wish it was better. I haven't played it recently enough to really go into the problems, but I remember it being a little clunky and not as great as I was hoping, and I think Bug kind of has the same problems. But, you know, hey, maybe go back and check out Bug and Bug 2. Maybe they hold up better than I remember. Maybe I will go back and check them out at some point. Alright. Speaking of Enemy Zero, here we have the prequel to it. Sort of a prequel. It's in the same series, and this is D. D, which came out on the Saturn and the PlayStation and the 3DO. I think the 3DO has like the director's cut version that was supposedly hand-delivered by Kenji Eno himself. Anyways, D is a really cool psychological horror adventure game. I wouldn't call it a survival horror game. It's more or less a digital story. Kind of a visual novel with a bit more interaction, but D is a really cool game. Whoa. Cool ad for, what is this? What is this, Rise of the Robots 2? Yeah, Rise 2, Resurrection in there. But yeah, D is a really neat game. Real easy playthrough. It's probably like an hour and a half playthrough at most. Cool, interesting, some neat puzzles in there. Alright, we're going to get into some of the some reproductions here. Now, these first 3 I have here are really crappy reproductions. I mean, the games work fine, but the presentation on these are really crappy. They're in the little, like, flimsy, thin, like, dollar DVD cases you would get back in the day. And the art is all stretched out. However, this is a fantastic game. One of the best games on the Saturn. One of the kind of the best hidden gems on there. Purikura Daisakusen, which is kind of, I think it's a spin-off of the, not Power Stone. Oh gosh, what is the fighting game? Power something. But it's Atlas. A spin-off of an Atlas fighting game. And this is like an isometric, top-down shoot-'em-up. It's really, really good. It has an amazing soundtrack. I mean, it goes from like well-orchestrated, fantastic, kind of Zelda-esque style music to like straight up full-on like thrash and metal, double kicks and all for like boss fights and certain levels. It's great. This game is awesome. I 100% am going to do a review on it at some point. I want to say Jimmy Hoppa has done an excellent review on it many years ago. Next up is G-Vector. This is a shoot 'em up, a very, very, very difficult one that I got in hopes of trying to get good at it, and I never really quite did. I don't think I've ever seen past maybe like level 2 or 3. Very difficult, like pseudo 3D shoot 'em up. But check it out if you are into shoot 'em ups. It's pretty cool. Now, next up is a game that came out on the Saturn and the PlayStation, but I want to say the Saturn version is the better of the two. It is, let's see here. Okay, I want to make sure I had the name right. Neketsu Oyoko Hot-Blooded Family, a really good beat-em-up. Pretty wacky at times. It doesn't quite venture into, like, Gourmet Sentai Barayaro territory, but it is a little more, goofy. Oh no, it is a little goofier than your average beat-em-up. One I definitely want to take a look at some point. You know, if I want to sell you on this game, you end up getting swallowed by a whale in level 2, and then fight your way inside of the whale and get shot out of the blowhole, and then fight a boss on the top of that whale. It's amazing. It's great. Go play this game. It's pretty wonderful. Alright. Next up is actually a game that I need to really spend more time with. I think I've only played, gosh, Hold on, there's an extra disc in here. I think this might be like the soundtrack. That's cool. Anyways, I need to spend more time with it. I think I've only played maybe like 30, 40 minutes of this, but it's Shining Wisdom for the Sega Saturn. This is a Working Designs game. They brought it out and over here and did a whole bunch of extra stuff to it. It's a really expensive game, so I opted to get a reproduction. And it's a really good, like, over-the-top, pseudo 3D... I want to say it's an action RPG, kind of like Zelda. But yeah, really, really cool game. I need to spend a lot more time with it. Just looking at the screenshots on the back here is making me go, God dang, I should probably just pop this in as soon as I'm done with this video and play some. Alright, that is kind of like the miscellaneous stack of odds and ends. Let's get to this one right here. Big boy. Alright, first up, excuse me, is a RPG from Hudson. And it is called Legend of Heroes Treasure. And it is a really, really gorgeous 2D RPG for the Saturn. And, you know, what everybody kind of remembers of the Saturn nowadays is just how great the console did 2D. And a lot of these 2D RPGs look so freaking good. And this is absolutely one of them. I wish I could play more of this. I picked this up, I don't know, probably 2 years ago for Christmas, maybe a year ago. And I need to sit down and I need to find a good game fact to try and walk me through it. Because it's completely in Japanese. I can't get very far. But the game is gorgeous and it looks so cool. And I wish I could play more of it. I should really sit down and see if I can't get a little bit more out of it than what I have. Next up is a fighting game in a extremely underrated, amazing series, and that is Asuka 120% Burning Fest Final. Now, I wouldn't say this is the best Asuka 120% game. I believe that belongs to... Let's see if I can find it up here real quick. I have it on the PlayStation somewhere. Alright, I'm not gonna look too hard for it right now, but Asuka 120% Burning Fest Maximum, maybe? Might be... Oh, excuse me. I'm having a brain aneurysm. This is the PlayStation 1. I also have an Asuka 120% game on the Saturn. That's hilarious. This actually is the best one. Burning Fest Final for the PlayStation 1. Excellent. Excellent PlayStation 1 game. But we're not here to talk about that. We will find the Asuka 120% game I was going to talk about here in a little bit. I'm sure it's in one of these stacks. Anyways, King of Fighters 96, my personal favorite of the King of Fighters games. What can you say about it? It's King of Fighters. It's the one from 96. It's the 96th edition in the series. They had really gotten it down to a T at this point. It's excellent. Really good game. I love the King of Fighters games. This is, yeah, just a personal favorite of mine. It's the one I first played. And this is kind of the game that really made me get into fighting games. I had been curious about them, but never really put time into them. And I sat down to play this one, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And it was kind of one of those games that really got me into Neo Geo as well. Okay, I'm going to have to look at the name for this one, which of course is not written in English on either side of this case. Oh, okay, I think it's All Japan Pro Wrestling featuring Virtua, and it is a really cool wrestling game for the Saturn, 3D wrestling game, and it features a couple characters from the Virtua Fighter series. So this is really cool. Check this game out if you're a wrestling fan. It has real wrestlers in there as well as those Virtua Fighter characters. Really, really cool. Yeah, I need to spend more time with this game. I remember it being pretty fun. I think it does use the Japanese wrestling combat system, which is a little different than, you know, like your SmackDown or Aki Engine grappling system. So if you're not familiar with Japanese wrestling games, look a bit into their grappling system. It does take a little bit to grasp it, but if you're into that kind of thing, really cool game. Definitely worth picking up, and I think it's still somewhat cheap. Speaking of fighting games that are underrated, here we have Advanced VG, part of the Variable Geo series, which is a really cool Bishoujo fighter series. I think it started out on the PC Engine. I could be wrong. It maybe even started on like a Japanese computer actually. But this kind of goes alongside the Asuka 120% series. I would say this is not quite as good as the Asuka 120% series, but still, Variable Geo, really cool. They definitely leaned more into the whole ecchi thing of like, hey, we got hot anime babes in this game. Hey, oh, look at that. They definitely leaned more into that. You can kind of tell in the back of this case. I don't know, you see that? I mean, some nipple on there. There's some booty cheeks on there. But these games are actually really good fighting games. Okay, here we've got a couple games upside down. That's the thing about these Saturn games is I usually have to put them in like backwards. See, here's the actual spine of it. I usually have to put the front spine facing out because they usually have the English written on the front spine. But this is Dynamite Deca, aka Die Hard Arcade in the US. I have the import version because it is much cheaper. But this game is wonderfully goofy. Fantastic. I love it. It's a great 3D beat 'em up. Superbly dumb. Such a joy to play through this game every once in a while, especially with a friend. Yeah, Dynamite Deca. Great, dumb fun. Its sequel, Dynamite Cop, is probably... I don't know if it's better or not. It's much shorter, but it is a lot goofier and far more over the top. But Dynamite Deca, great game. I'm glad to have it in my collection. It was one of the first few I tracked down once I got my Saturn. Alright, here is what is probably my favorite fighting game of all time. And that is Street Fighter 02, or Alpha 2, for those of us here in the States. Very, very cheap game, and that was kind of the reason I picked it up. I was like, hey, I'm not all that big on Street Fighter. But I picked this up, and this really was the game that sold me on, alright, now Street Fighter does it best, for sure. This game has such great controls. It's a lot more forgiving than any of the Super Turbo games. The inputs just seem to flow more naturally and come out a little easier. Fantastic game. I know Alpha 3 is technically a better game than this one, but this is the one I have a lot of nostalgia tied to. And Alpha 3 is also really, really expensive on the Saturn, so Alpha 2 is the way to go. Alright, more fighting games. We've got Virtua On, or is it Virtual? No, it is Virtual. Virtual On, which is a really cool 3D mech fighter, sort of similar to like the Real Robots for the PlayStation 1 that I also have on the shelf back here. But this is a really cool, really cool game, and I think it has like there's even like a Saturn specific like fight stick for it, for like mech controls and stuff. Really cool game, a lot of fun. Holds up surprisingly well for a early 3D fighter. Alright, here we go. Here's something I've covered on the channel. A couple of years ago, I talked about Game Tengoku, the Game Paradise. Really cool, off-the-wall, shoot 'em up, based around video games and all that kind of stuff. The Saturn version is one of the best. I believe that there is now, there's a Steam release of it, and I think there's even now a Switch release of it, of like the cruising version or whatever it is. But fantastic game, features a lot of really fun, like there's like an RPG theme level. You're literally fighting inside of like video games and arcade cabinets at certain points. Really cool shoot 'em up. Check out my video on it if you're curious about this game. It's a lot of fun. Now this is another game that I really need to sit down and spend some time with. And that is Linkle Liver Story, which has an absurd title, but it is a really good action RPG on the Saturn, exclusive to the Saturn. And it is actually a follow-up to, goodness gracious, what is that game called? Came out for the Genesis, and it was a Link to the Past clone. A really good one. Oh, Crusader of Senti was the game. This is like the spiritual successor to Crusader of Senti, made by the same team. If this is just, I think, a straight-up Sega game. This is really good. I've played about an hour of this and really enjoyed it, and I need to go back and just do a full-on playthrough of it for a review on the channel, because I really do want to talk about this. And, by the way, this is a reproduction. Also, that Tengoku cart, or, this was also a reproduction. This is a reproduction with the English translation. So, these definitely do exist. It has been translated to English. Check it out. It's a fantastic game. Alright, that's that stack. Here is the next one. First up, Fighters Megamix. This is the famous fighting game where you can fight as the Daytona car. It is wonderful. It's dumb. I think you can fight as the AM2 tree as well. There's a lot of really goofy stuff in this game, but it's just a really good 3D fighter based off of the Virtua Fighter. And, oh, what's that other game? Because I don't own a copy of it because it's basically just this game but less. Oh, man. Can't think of the game title. It'll pop up on screen. But it's basically a mix of, it plays like a Virtua Fighter. Really fun game. Really good. Absolutely should be in anybody's Saturn collection. And it's pretty cheap. Ooh, here's a really good one. So a lot of people remember and still talk about Saturn Bomberman. However, there was another Bomberman game on the Saturn called Saturn Bomberman Fight. And this is more in line with the 3D games that would come out on the 64, on the Nintendo 64. This is like the first game that precedes Bomberman 64. So if you're like me, a big fan of Bomberman 64, this is for you because it is completely in 3D. And this game, I think I was just looking around eBay last night, still goes for like $30. I think I got mine for around that price. This is really fun. It's isometric, so the controls can be a little difficult, but it is so much fun to play with friends. There's some good unlockable characters. Yeah, Saturn Bomberman Fight. Check it out. Underrated game on the Saturn. My goodness, the dust coming off of my shelves here and off of these games is making me sniffly and and all that stuff. I'm allergic to dust, so this is like slightly uncomfortable, but it's all good. We'll make it through. Alright, so the Oscar 120% game I was thinking of is Burning Fest Limited for the Saturn. Here we go. This is the game I'm talking about. Seriously underrated fighting game series. They're really good. This one is pretty tough. The CPU is really good at this game and will kick your ass. But great sprite-based 2D fighter. I think this series started on the PC Engine. Although, actually, no, again, this one might have started on like a computer, a Japanese computer, like the FM Towns Marty or something. But I got a ton of ports. The one on the PC Engine is really good. This Saturn version is really good. And then that PlayStation 1 game I talked about. Really good. Awesome fighting game series you should check out. Speaking of fighting games, here's a classic one from Capcom. X-Men Children of the Atom. I believe this is one of the games that uses the expansion cart for extra frames and makes this, and better loading times, making this the definitive version of a home port of this game. Really good fighting game. I'm not that big into X-Men or Marvel really in general, but you know, a Capcom fighting game. I love them. You can't go wrong. Alright, here we have a great offering from Konami. It is Daytona Twin B. If you're a fan of the Twin B shoot 'em up games, this is a fantastic one to own. Still relatively cheap, I believe. I think I got this for $30. I think it's still somewhat around that price. It might be in the 40s now. Really good shoot 'em up. It's an arcade port. Fairly goofy. It reminds me. It's kind of like a top-down version of Gradius. Or, I'm sorry, of the Proteus series, although less goofy than the Proteus series. Still a lot of fun. Can't go wrong with Daytona Twin B. Alright, next we got Astra Superstars for the Saturn. Really good game. I don't know why I keep saying for the Saturn, as if this isn't a video completely about my Saturn collection. I don't know. It's just ingrained in me with the whole pickups video thing. Astra Superstars is a really cool 2D fighter where you're like flying the whole time and you can like dodge down to get out of the way of attacks and stuff like that. I did a video on this a while ago. It'll pop up here. It was a collaboration video with another YouTuber. You will have to check it out to see more on that video. Cool game though. Really expensive. This is a reproduction. Alright, more fighting games. Because if there's anything the Saturn has a lot of, it's fighting games and shoot 'em ups. This is Last Bronx, a really good 3D fighter with weapons. It's a weapons fighter. Again, it kind of plays like Virtua Fighter and like Fighters Megamix. Really cool game. Still fairly cheap to pick up. I can't remember if this is a Japan exclusive or not. It might be. But yeah, Last Bronx. Cool game. Check it out. It even comes with 2 discs. I don't remember what exactly is on the special disc versus what is on the regular disc. Oh, wow. Okay. I have not opened this up in a long time. This comes with like a sticker sheet. That's really cool. It's missing one of the stickers, but some of them are there. That's awesome. Yeah, last Bronx. All right, here is one of the absolute gems for the Saturn. And this recently, within I think the last 2 years here, got a English translation, and that is Bulk Slash, an excellent 3D mech shooter. God, this game is awesome. This is one of the first games that I bought when I first got a debit card or a credit card. I was like, oh my god, I've got to get this game. And I got a really good deal because this is the greatest hits version. I think I got this for, it might have been like $80, and now the game is even more expensive. Bulk Slash, 100% check it out. That English translation is great. Awesome, awesome game, great music. A lot of voiceovers, some cool animation in there. Great mech shooter, and you like, not only do you like fly around and shoot stuff, but you also go on the ground and transform into your regular mech and, you know, fight stuff. It's really cool. All right. PlayStation had Resident Evil, although it did come to Saturn. However, the Saturn has Deep Fear. Deep Fear is a Resident Evil clone. However, it kind of throws in elements of The Thing meets like what was it, Deep Blue, the submarine horror movie. But yeah, you're part of a crew on a submarine, and some sort of bio outbreak happens, and people start like turning into thing creatures. It's a really cool game. You should 100% check it out. The Japanese version is completely playable in English. All of the wonderful voice acting, fantastic grade A voice acting, is in English. The only thing that shows up in Japanese is when you enter a room name will pop up. That's going to be the hard part to keep track of, but other than that, get the Japanese version. It's relatively cheap. Don't get the European version, which is like hundreds, if not maybe thousands of dollars at this point. But yeah, Deep Fear, great game. All right, that is that stack. Oh my god, my legs are falling asleep. Oh, because I do not usually shoot videos this long. But we shall soldier on. Got a big old stack right here. Pocket Fighter, one of the best fighters on the Saturn. I absolutely love this game, although I guess it did come out on other platforms. But I love Pocket Fighter. This game is so much fun to just play with a group of friends, even if they're not fighting game fans. This is a good one to pull out because you can do a lot of damage without having to know combos. And it's just really goofy and over the top. Pocket Fighter, excellent game. Much better than Puzzle Fighter, which I am terrible at. Alright, this is definitely an underrated gem for the Saturn. Kiryu Tosei is a really cool party game. It's kind of like if Bomberman met Dodgeball. So there are, I think, like, you're in like a circular arena that you can either be knocked out of, or you can just be depleted, or your health can be depleted. And there are like dodgeballs that basically drop in, and you have to throw them at your opponents to try and knock them out. It's basically a ring out game, but it's a really, really cool, good one. I 100% want to do a video on this. I've been thinking about doing one for a while. Again, the wonderful Jimmy Hoppa, I think, has long since beaten me to it. But again, that's not going to deter me from wanting to do a video on it. Here is a fantastic game for importing. House of the Dead. I don't know, you ask some people and they don't like this version. It definitely has its flaws. I can't help but love it. I love the House of the Dead games. They're goofy and fun. Great light gun games. I have played a lot of this with the controller. It still plays fairly okay. The US version goes for a ton of money. However, the Japanese version, when I got it, was $5. I think it's worth a whole lot more now, but it's still relatively cheap. So if you need House of the Dead for the Saturn, this is the version to get. The import one is far cheaper. And, you know, why would you not be collecting import games already for the Saturn? That is the way to go. Alright, next up is, I'm just going to call it Ninku because the name on the side here is an absolute mess. Go ahead and look at that, if it'll show up on camera. If it'll focus. Alright, I'll give this a shot. Ninku Tuyo Kina Yatura no Daigeki to. There's no spacing between any of that. So I don't know if those are all just one, if those are different words or all one big word. Anyways, this is a honestly very subpar fighting game. I got it for pretty cheap off of eBay. And it was one of those games that I'd heard about and had seen some stuff on, but I had never played before I picked it up. Thank God it was very cheap, because yeah, it's not very good. But if you are into very obscure fighting games, or into, I believe, the anime series that this is based on, hey, check it out. Speaking of mediocre games, here is Planet Joker. This is a mediocre, is the best way to put it, mediocre 3D shoot 'em up for the Saturn. I've wanted to do a video on this. I believe I even started a script for it many years ago and just never quite got around to it, because I cannot get past the 4th level. This game gets pretty hard. But yeah, it's okay. Look, there are a million shooters on the Saturn that are way better than this game, but this one was relatively cheap and I found it rather interesting, and I've had my fun with it. I've put a couple hours into the game. Excuse me. I enjoy it, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. That is Planet Joker. Alright, here's a really interesting game. Coin Puzzle Mogia. Had to make sure that was the name. I knew it was Coin Puzzle something. Coin Puzzle Mogia. A puzzle game, as you might infer from the title. And it plays a lot like Money Puzzle Exchanger for the Neo Geo. As a matter of fact, they are nearly identical games. This one plays, however, a little more similar to like a puzzle fighter than it does just Money Puzzle Exchanger. And because of that, I do not think it is as good as Money Puzzle Exchanger. But it is really strange to me that these games are so similar. Where is oh no. Find it very strange that these oh my goodness, that these games are so similar, considering I don't think they share any of the same development teams or whatever. Actually, wow, that's actually kind of crazy. Looking at the copyright dates on the back of this came first. I would have figured this was the cheap knockoff. However, I guess if people that made Money Puzzle Exchanger liked this game and thought, hey, this could be better, they did an excellent job. This is the better game. You know what, though? Maybe this is just the copyright date on this PlayStation version, because this did come out for the Neo Geo. I'll have to look into that. Maybe something will pop up on screen right now. Anyways, Coin Puzzle Mogia. Interesting game. Hopefully there's a ROM of this online. When I got this a couple years ago, there was no ROM for it online. I'm sure it's been dumped at this point. Put Money Puzzle Exchanger back up there. Oh, my legs. And I still have another stack to get to. Okay, next up is Fist. Just called Fist. This is a ridiculously bad 3D fighter for for the Saturn. It is technically a sequel to the equally not so great Seifuku Densetsu Pretty Fighter on the Super Famicom, which I've also talked about in another collaboration I did with another channel, which will be linked here right now. But yes, this is like a really goofy, it is a so bad it's good kind of game, a kusoge, if you will. I want to talk about this game at some point, and I will. That is Fist. Fist. Sorry, that's how you got to pronounce it. All right, this is my horrible, crappy copy of Resident Evil. I threw it into a jewel case and just printed out a crappy cover of it many years ago, because I didn't want to just leave it in a bare case. But the Saturn version of Resident Evil is really cool. Very hard game. I've never been good at the original Resident Evil. But yeah, cool version of it. It has some slight differences to the PlayStation version. Some people prefer the game. I can't really weigh in on that debate, considering I haven't played too much of the game for either system. But I wanted to have it because I did want to play through it. And, one of these days I will get around to actually trying to beat that game. Alright, next up is Dead or Alive. Speaking of PlayStation and Saturn games, this is the Saturn version, which is different to the PlayStation version. I have played more of this one than I have the PlayStation one, so again, I can't really weigh in and say if one is better than the other, but I think the general consensus is that the PlayStation 1 version is better. I want to say, like, the main difference that I can see off the top of my head here is I want to say Tina is actually a brunette in this game rather than a blonde like she is in the entire rest of the series. But yeah, that is Dead or Alive. The goofy game that started a incredibly wonderful and dumb series. Yeah. Speaking of incredibly dumb, Supersonic Racing. Yes, Sonic R. Ah, what a wonderfully bad game. This is the type of game you break out after you've had a couple of beers with some friends and you're like, alright, let's just play some trash. Sonic R. I really do love this game. It is bad. It's so bad. That music, fantastic. Ah, it's wonderful. It's dumb. It's Sonic R. Oh man, here's a game with a little bit of a story. Blue Seed for the Sega Saturn. Based off of the anime Blue Seed, which, gosh, I must have watched it. I probably watched it, maybe it might have been right as I got into college, right before I was in college. And that summer break, I had found out about this game. And since it is an RPG, there's some stuff on the back here, if the camera will focus, and the glare won't act up. RPG, so it was really cheap, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah. I love Blue Seed, let me grab the game. And I can remember spending a good week on that summer break, and my buddy, one of my buddies would come over, and we were the kind of people that's like, yo, we both love video games, but we also just like enjoy each other's company. It's like, cool, I'm gonna play this game, and he was gonna play this game. We're just gonna exist in the same room and hang out. And I remember one of those gaming sessions, I played a lot of Blue Seed, which is, again, entirely in Japanese, so I had to get a somewhat crappy game FAQ off of GameFAQs to get me through a good portion of the game. And I if I remember this correctly, because I haven't played this in a couple of years, the battle system is like card-based, and the cards you get are random in every battle. So there might be turns where it's like, okay, I can only defend, okay, I can only, you know, do magic or something. Okay, alright, now I can finally attack. You know, stuff like that. A flawed game, however, the music is great, and it does have like the anime opening and ending in there. Interesting RPG for the Saturn. If you are a fan of Blue Seed, hey, seek this out. It's fun enough to play as a Blue Seed fan. Actually, yes, I can confirm this has the card battle system. I can see it here on the back. What an interesting game. Alright, we are down to the last stack, which is not quite as big as you might think. There's actually a couple really big boxes. Big old boxes. Alright, we've got... Hold up. Shinrei Jusatsushi Tarumaru. I think it's like Psychic Defender Tarumaru. Tarumaru. Good lord. This is a really cool side-scrolling, I guess you would consider it like a shooter, platforming shooter, side-scroller. Some really, really awesome boss fights and stuff. It's kind of set in like feudal Japan with a bunch of different monsters that you're taking down. Really cool. This is an extremely, extremely expensive game, which is why I have a reproduction of this. This is definitely the way to go for this game, because it costs... I don't know what it costs at this point, but when I got this game, it was like $500. So I was like, yeah, $20 reproduction for me, please. But very, very awesome game. 100% worth checking out. Alright, here's one that I picked up not too long ago. I want to say it was at least within the year, maybe 2 years ago. That is Lunar Magic School, or Magic School Lunar. Really cool spin-off in the Lunar series. I believe this has a translation. If not, there is a game FAQ you can follow. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous game. I mean, Lunar itself, gorgeous series. This is just a really cool side game in the series. Check it out. Alright, here's one I talked about recently in my Otakon pickups. Waku Waku 7. Excellent fighter for the Neo Geo. Got a pretty decent port on the Saturn. It's not quite as crispy and vibrant as that Neo Geo port, but hey, really good game. Love to have it. A lot of fun. Speaking of fighting games, we've got Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, which is a nice spin-off, and or actually I guess it's more of like the progression of the just regular Fatal Fury games. But yeah, this is a really, really gorgeous addition to the Fatal Fury series. I almost said Fatal Frame there. definitely check this game out if you haven't. It is, I like it better than the earlier Fatal Fury games, including just regular Fatal Fury Special. Yeah, Real Bout, Fatal Fury Special, fantastic game. I really actually hope I am getting that name correct. Because, yeah, Real Bout, Fatal Fury Special, and just Fatal Fury Special. Anyways, great fighting game. And this is the last game in the collection. Evangelion Iron Maiden, or I think Iron Girlfriend is maybe what it was called at some point. I know this one definitely says, yeah, Evangelion Iron Maiden. But this is like visual novel based around the series that like takes place in between basically 2 episodes or of the original series, where this I don't know, new chick shows up into town and kind of takes a liking to Shinji. It's interesting. It's kind of fun and goofy. There is a translated version of this on the PC, I believe, which is how I've played through this game. As somebody who's not really a big visual novel person, I did find this kind of interesting and fun aside, as a huge fan of Evangelion. And this game even got a sequel, I think, on like the PSP? Yeah, I don't know. Check that out if you're interested. I've never played that, but yeah. Evangelion Iron Maiden. I keep wanting to say Iron Girlfriend. I swear that might be like what it was also called at some point. But yeah, that is going to do it for my Sega Saturn collection. There's a lot of games. It's a lot of games, and it's still not even the majority of the library. There's over like 1,000 games to this. My goodness, we have been going for 42 minutes. This might be one of the longest videos I've ever shot. But yeah, that's going to do it for my Saturn collection. Hopefully you all had a good time checking this out. If you did, let me know, and I will definitely go through and talk about some of my other collections. Anyways, I will see you all next time. Bam, that's it. That's all I gotta say. I don't know how else to end this video. We're just gonna end it right there. I'll see you all next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this episode, consider checking out these other videos right here, or even subscribing. Also, if you'd like to throw me a couple of bucks, you can support the show on Patreon.